Mr. President, I rise to support the motion. Anti-Semitism is a medieval curse, and we do not want it establishing itself here in Australia. In 1981, the American President Ronald Reagan was shot and rushed to a hospital. On the operating table, Reagan quipped, "I hope you're all Republicans," to which the chief surgeon, a registered Democrat, replied, "Mr. President, we are all Republicans today." Now, of course, we all expect complete impartiality in our healthcare system, particularly a public healthcare system. But today, Australia is in shock to learn that nurses at a Sydney hospital are openly bragging about not only wanting to kill Jewish patients, but that they already have. I understand the nurses have been stood down, but what is most disturbing is that these nurses, who otherwise seem like very normal young Aussies, are so casual in their extreme anti-Semitism. They had no inhibitions talking like this, even on a public viewing platform. The whole thing is shocking. I can only conclude, Mr. President, that these nurses come from a culture where people routinely talk like this. It is incorrect to suggest that the shocking spike in anti-Semitic behaviour is due to the current conflict in the Middle East. There have been multiple Arab-Israeli conflicts for decades, and none of them saw a rise in public anti-Semitism in Australia, but this one has. What's different? Our immigration program has by and large been good, though I am personally in favour of a 5-year general pause. But more specifically, if we grant visas to people who are from a culture with pervasive anti-Semitism, should we be surprised to see a sharp rise in anti-Semitism? Mr. Speaker, we do not need new hate speech laws that I fear long-term will only fuel this problem. More than anything else, this is further evidence that we need a 5-year immigration pause, and we need to completely overhaul our immigration program so that the free market determines which skills we need, and that we select for migrants who come from cultures where anti-Semitism and other malign values are not a feature. Thank you.
Thank you. The Honourable Mark Latham.
I rise in support of what the Honourable John Ruddick has just said. One of the hardest things in politics is to accept the limits of government and parliamentary power. And in the case of anti-Semitism and these problems that have come to Australia essentially out of the Middle East, we are dealing with hatreds that are ingrained and clearly a part of the existence of these people for thousands of years. And the idea we're going to roll that back with some protest laws in front of a synagogue, or some tougher penalties for graffiti, or we're going to try and define hate speech and the incitement to hatred, really, it doesn't understand the extent of the problem. And that stuff out of Bankstown Hospital today, do you think we've got the power of a parliament and a government to wind back those hatreds, which are clearly integral to the existence of those two nurses? It is contrary to every principle of a civilised society. It's frightening. It's frightening to think that the people in Bankstown and southwest Sydney might have to use that hospital could be treated that way. It is absolutely horrific.
I, by and large, agree with the contributions, except that I would put a caveat on the last two contributions from the Honourable John Ruddick and the Honourable Mark Latham. I'm not saying their contributions, I dismiss their contributions out of hand, but I do take exception, and that is this, is that if people think that the source of this problem is Australia's immigration program, then they are, I think, sorely mistaken. The reason this society is so great and is so progressive and so open-minded is because of our immigration program, but more importantly, the Whitlam-Grasby concept of multiculturalism, which is not that you import people for an economic value or to assimilate, is that you bring people here because it gives, one of the value adds is that it gives your domestic population a different perspective on what it means to be a human being and have different experiences from different cultures. Now, if the proposition is that we put up the shutters and to hell with multiculturalism because we're importing hatred, I think that's a very zero-sum bipolar assessment of the situation.